It was July 17, 1993, a typical sunny Saturday of the dry winter in Brazil's central west region. The temperature in Nobres, a municipality located 125 kilometers from Cuiabá, the capital of Mato Grosso, reached 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, at 9:47 a.m. when Marina Alves Rodrigues, 28 years old, a tourism expert graduated from the Federal University of Mato Grosso, arrived at the region's cave complex, accompanied by two colleagues. The goal was simple: to map new tourist attractions for an ecotourism project that would be presented to the State Department of Tourism the following week. Marina was known for her dedication to sustainable tourism. Born in Cuiabá, the only daughter of university professors, she had developed a passion for the natural beauty of Mato Grosso from an early age. After completing her degree with a thesis on the tourist potential of Brazilian caves, she decided to specialize in speleotourism, the tourism of caves and grottos. Tall, with long black hair and brown skin, Marina was described by friends and family as methodical, careful, and extremely well prepared for expeditions. She never improvised, said Paulo Mendes, 32, one of her colleagues who accompanied her. That day, Marina always checked the equipment 3 times before any expedition and knew the safety protocols like no one else. The Nobres cave complex was already partially known at the time, but many cavities had not been properly mapped. In 1993, ecotourism was starting to gain momentum in Brazil, and Marina was determined to develop responsible itineraries that could generate income for the local community without degrading the natural heritage. The expedition that day began at 10:15 a.m. Marina, Paulo, and Teresa Campos, 30, entered the Japanese grotto, one of the largest in the region, approximately 100 meters long. Equipped with lanterns, helmets, ropes, and water, they planned to spend around 4 hours exploring and photographing the interior. The local guide, who was supposed to accompany them, canceled at the last minute due to a health issue. But the trio, confident in their experience, decided to continue anyway. At 12:37 p.m., as recorded on Paulo's watch, the separation that would forever change the course of their lives occurred. At a point where the cave split into 2 corridors, Marina suggested they separate to optimize their time. I'll go through this corridor on the right and photograph the limestone formations. You can explore the left one, and we'll meet here in an hour at the latest. These were the last words Paulo and Teresa heard from Marina. 1 hour passed, then 2. Concerned about the delay, Paulo and Teresa returned to the meeting point and waited for another 30 minutes. They called out Marina's name repeatedly, but only the echo answered. They then decided to take the corridor she had chosen. But after 20 minutes of walking, they found no sign of their colleague. At 3:40 p.m., the two exited the cave and called the military police and the fire department of Nobres. The news spread quickly throughout the small town of just over 12,000 inhabitants. Local volunteers organized to help with the search. The rescue team from the fire department of Cuiabá was called and arrived at the site at 6:23 p.m. when the daylight was already fading. The first 24 hours are crucial in cases of disappearance, and the operation worked non-stop. Cave rescue specialists with search dogs and specific equipment entered the cave and thoroughly explored the corridor Marina had taken, illuminating every crack, every passage, and every possible access to other galleries. The following morning, Marina's parents, Ricardo and Marta Rodrigues, arrived in Nobres, visibly shaken. They stayed at the only inn in town and closely monitored every detail of the search. "My daughter is experienced. She'll make it out of this," Marta repeated, like a mantra, as she waited for news at the cave entrance. On the 3rd day of searching, the firefighters found Marina's camera about 500 meters from the separation point. The equipment was intact, carefully placed on a flat rock as if it had been deliberately positioned there. The photos on this end. Rolls showed methodical records of the cave's formations. The last image had been captured at 1:04 p.m., as indicated by the camera's timestamp. If you want to follow more cases like this, which shake society and reveal hidden truths, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any investigation. The official investigation into Marina Alves Rodriguez's disappearance formally began on July 21, 1993, when Detective Altaya Goncalves took over the case. The main initial difficulty was determining whether it was an accident inside the cave, or if other possibilities should be considered. We have three main hypotheses, said the detective in a press conference on the fifth day of searching. An accident in the cave with the victim trapped in some difficult-to-access location, a premeditated crime, or the possibility that the tourism expert got lost in the forest after leaving the cave through some unknown secondary exit. First line of investigation focused on the interior of the cave. Speleologists from the Brazilian Speleological Society were called from São Paulo to assist in the search and the detailed mapping of the cave. For 10 consecutive days, every meter of the Japanese grotto was thoroughly searched. Metal detectors and thermal imaging equipment were used, but no further trace of Marina was found beyond the camera. The speleologists identified 3 narrow openings that could lead to the lower galleries of the cave. 2 of them were fully explored, but with no results. The third, however, a vertical crack approximately 40 centimeters wide by 80 centimeters long, presented a greater challenge. Located 670 meters from the entrance, the opening led to a drop of about 15 meters, which ended in a well-lit chamber. On July 29th, firefighters descended to this chamber and explored the underground lake, which extended for approximately 200 meters. Once again, no traces were found. The hypothesis of an accident inside the cave began to lose strength. Meanwhile, the civil police began investigating the surroundings of the tourism expert. They interviewed her parents, friends, colleagues, and ex-boyfriends. Marina had ended a 3-year relationship with Renato Tavares, a geography professor, 2 months before her disappearance. According to reports, the breakup had been amicable, and Renato was traveling through the Pantanal on the day of her disappearance, which was confirmed by dozens of witnesses. We had different views about the future, Renato told investigators. Marina wanted to fully dedicate herself to the tourism development of Mato Grosso, while I was planning to pursue a PhD in São Paulo. We ended as friends. In August 1993, the first lead that could indicate a crime emerged. A municipal employee from Nobres, João Correa, 41, reported having seen Marina arguing heatedly with a man at the only restaurant in town the night before the disappearance. According to Joey, the man seemed upset and gestured a lot, while Marina maintained a firm but visibly uncomfortable posture. The investigation identified the man as Ernesto Prado, 45, a hotel businessman who planned to build a luxury resort near the Nobres caves. Later findings revealed that Marina had publicly opposed the project, claiming it would cause irreversible damage to the local ecosystem and the caves themselves. When questioned, Ernesto confirmed the argument but denied any involvement in the unsolved disappearance. Yes, we argued about my project. She was radical in her environmentalist views, and I lost my patience. But I left the restaurant and went straight to Cuiabá that same night. Toll booth records and witnesses confirmed that Ernesto was in Cuiabá the following morning, making his direct involvement unlikely. In September 1993, after nearly 2 months of intensive searches with no results, the operation in the cave was officially closed. Search efforts in the surrounding forest continued for another 2 weeks, with the aid of helicopters and search dogs, but also with no success. The second phase of the investigation, now under the leadership of State Detective Carlos Eduardo Viana, transferred from Cuyaba specifically for the case, focused on potential professional conflicts of Marina. As a tourism expert engaged in environmental causes, she had made several opponents among local business people and politicians. Marina had reported 3 projects to the state public prosecutor's office that she considered harmful to the Nobres region, said Teresa Campos, a colleague of hers. She received some veiled threats in the months leading up to her disappearance, but she never took them seriously. One of these reports involved the illegal extraction of limestone near the caves, an activity that could compromise the stability of the formations. The company responsible, Holcario Central Oeste, was owned by a cousin of the then mayor of Nobres. The investigation found that 2 weeks before her disappearance, Marina had managed to obtain a court injunction suspending the activities of the mining company. The owner of Holcario Central Oeste, Augusto Rezende, was interrogated twice and his alibi was verified. On the day of the disappearance, he was in a meeting with lawyers in Cuyaba, confirmed by multiple witnesses. Solidifying his presence in the capital throughout the day, the investigation continued for another 4 months, with no significant progress. The case began to fade in the media, and the resources allocated to the investigation were gradually reduced. In February 1994, Marina's family hired a private detective, former federal police officer Marcelo Duarte, who worked on the case for another 6 months without finding new leads. In December 1994, nearly a year and a half after her disappearance, an unexpected twist occurred. A group of tourists visiting another cave in the region, about 3 kilometers from the Japanese grotto, found a notebook wedged into a rocky crevice at the entrance of the cave. The notebook, partially damaged by moisture, contained technical notes about geological formations, and on the last page, there was a detailed drawing that appeared to be a map of a cave with the inscription, "New Gallery." Restricted access, and the initials MAR, which matched the initials of Marina Alves Rodriguez. The discovery reignited the family's hopes and mobilized the authorities once again. The notebook was sent for handwriting analysis, which confirmed it was Marina's handwriting. The map, however, did not match any of the already mapped caves in the region, raising the hypothesis that the tourism expert may have discovered a new cave before disappearing. The following years were marked by sporadic progress and long periods of stagnation in the investigation. The notebook found in December 1994 sparked a new wave of searches in the region, focusing on attempts to locate the new gallery mentioned in Marina's notes. Volunteer speleologists, many motivated by the mystery the case had become, dedicated weekends and holidays to exploring the karst areas of Nobres. In March 1995, Marina's father, Ricardo Rodriguez, passed away from a heart attack. Doctors attributed the cause to chronic stress and high blood pressure, worsened by the anguish of his daughter's disappearance. Her mother, Marta, moved to Nobres permanently, determined to continue the search. "As long as I don't know what happened to my daughter, I will have no peace," she declared in an interview with a local newspaper in 1996. Marina was too meticulous to get lost in a cave. Something or someone prevented her from returning. In 1997, 4 years after the disappearance, the case gained national attention when it was presented on the TV Globo program Linha Direita. The broadcast generated dozens of calls with supposed information, most of them unfounded or lacking credibility. However, one of them caught the authorities' attention. A man who identified himself only as an employee of a local mining company reported that at the time of the disappearance, he had heard rumors about the discovery of a cave with rare crystal formations during a prospecting operation. According to him, the information had been kept secret by the company to avoid the preservation of the area, which would prevent mineral exploration. The anonymous tip led to a confidential investigation into mining activities in the region between 1992 and 1993. Investigators discovered that Calcario Centro Oeste had carried out unauthorized prospecting in environmental preservation areas. In the first half of 1993, exactly when Marina was working on her tourism mapping project, Detective Roberto Moreno, who took over the case in 1998, requested a court order to break the confidentiality of the mining company's internal documents. After a 7-month legal battle, the company was forced to release its prospecting reports. The documents revealed that, indeed, an uncatalogued karst formation had been identified approximately 4 kilometers from the Japanese grotto, with coordinates matching the area indicated on the map found in Marina's notebook. The possibility that Marina somehow discovered this cave before the mining company, or knew about the discovery and was documenting it to ensure its preservation, is emerging, explained Detective Moreno in an official report. This could represent a multi-million-dollar loss for the company, which had already invested in equipment for the area's exploration. In June 1999, a joint operation by the Civil Police Public Prosecutor's Office and IBAMA located the entrance to the cave mentioned in the mining company's documents. Named the Crystal Grotto by investigators, the cavity presented unique aragonite formations, a rare and highly valuable mineral, and evidence that someone had been there before. Footprints preserved in the clay floor in deep areas of the cave were found. The prints were compared to the only pair of Marina's boots that her family had kept. Forensic experts confirmed the compatibility of the size and tread pattern, strengthening the hypothesis that the tourism expert had discovered the cave before disappearing. Inside the Crystal Grotto, investigators found something even more disturbing. In a small side chamber, about 300 meters from the entrance, there were inscriptions made with what appeared to be mud, mixed with a reddish pigment. The inscriptions, partially erased by moisture, formed the letters AMA and what could be interpreted as the beginning of a D, followed by a vertical mark that could be an I or a 1. Considering Marina Alves Rodriguez initials, it is possible she was trying to write trap or something similar, but was interrupted, speculated criminal expert Antonio Vasconcelos in the official report. The discovery reinforced the suspicion of premeditated crime, possibly motivated by the discovery of the cave and its potential economic and environmental value. However, despite the circumstantial evidence, there was no conclusive proof directly linking any suspects to the disappearance. In 2001, 8 years after the disappearance, Calcario Centro Oeste ceased operations in Nobres after its environmental license was revoked for cumulative irregularities. Augusto Rezende, the owner, moved to Paraguay, where he started new businesses in the construction sector. Investigations continued at a slow pace in the following years, with periodic reviews of collected materials and new attempts to connect the evidence. The case became emblematic for criminology students and the subject of 2 books about unsolved mysteries in Brazil. Marta Rodriguez, Marina's mother, became an activist for the preservation of the Nobres caves and for the creation of safety protocols for cave tourism. In 2004, she succeeded in getting the city council to approve Lei Marina, which established strict rules for the exploration of caves in the region and prohibited the separation of groups during guided visits. Leave your comments, never give up on the truth. If you believe that every missing person deserves to be found, she urged, on the morning of August 12, 2006, exactly 13 years and 26 days after Marina's disappearance, Jose Pereira, a 59-year-old farmer who lived about 7 kilometers from the grotto complex, was taking his morning walk through his property when his dog, a mutt named Caramello, began barking incessantly near a depression in the ground that had formed after heavy rains the previous month. Intrigued by the dog's persistence, Jose approached and noticed that what seemed like just a hole in the ground was, in fact, the opening to a small underground cavity. With an improvised flashlight, he was able to see what appeared to be Enhang, unnatural object at the bottom of the opening, about 3 meters deep. Jose reported the find to his son, who then contacted the civil police. On the same day, an investigative team arrived at the site and, with proper equipment, accessed the small cavity. What they found left the experienced officers in shock. A complete human skeleton, sitting and leaning against the rock wall. Next to the skeleton was a partially deteriorated backpack, a broken spelunking helmet, and most disturbingly, a small pickaxe driven into the back of the skeleton. Between the thoracic vertebrae, the backpack contained documents preserved in a waterproof plastic bag, Marina Alves Rodriguez identification card, and her professional registration. The macabre discovery answered the question that had tormented her family, friends, and investigators for 13 years, but opened a new chapter in the mystery. Who killed Marina and why? The body was carefully removed and sent to the Forensic Medical Institute of Cuyaba, where detailed analyses confirmed the identity through dental records and determined that the cause of death was the blow to the back that struck vital organs. The position of the body and the characteristics of the wound indicated that Marina had been attacked from behind, likely by someone who was following her. The small cavity where the body was found had no natural connection to the region's cave system. It was a sinkhole, a vertical opening in the limestone ground that had been artificially enlarged, and then partially obstructed with stones and dirt in a clear attempt to conceal the body. The murderer knew the karst region and its geological processes very well, explained forensic geologist Claudio Mendez. He knew that a body placed in a sinkhole could remain preserved for decades due to the stable temperature and humidity conditions, and that the likelihood of accidental discovery was minimal. The analysis of the pickaxe revealed partial fingerprints that, despite being degraded by time, could be compared to the police database. The prints matched Joaquin Silva, 62 years old, who, in 1993, worked as a foreman in the prospecting operations of Calcario, Centro Oeste, and was responsible for identifying new exploration areas. Joaquin had retired in 2001 and lived on a small property in the outskirts of Rosario Oeste, a neighboring municipality to Nobres. When the police arrived to arrest him, they found only his wife, who informed them that her husband had passed away 6 months earlier from lung cancer. Joaquin's widow, initially reluctant, eventually revealed that in the weeks leading up to his death, her husband, tormented by guilt, had confessed to a crime he committed years earlier. According to her, Joaquin admitted to killing a woman from the city who had discovered a cave with valuable stones that he had been secretly mapping for the mining company. My husband said the woman was photographing the cave and taking notes. He tried to scare her so she would leave, but she threatened to report the illegal prospecting. That's when he lost his temper, Maria Silva stated in her official testimony. According to the confession reported by the widow, Joaquin followed Marina to the exit of the Crystal Grotto and attacked her with the pickaxe he was carrying. After the crime, he dragged the body to the sinkhole, which he knew well because it was in an area he had previously prospected, and concealed the entrance. He said his boss never knew about the crime, that it was his own decision to protect his job in the discovery he had made, concluded Maria. The posthumous confession, although it could not be directly proven, matched all the evidence collected over the years and explained details that only the murderer could have known. The case was officially closed in November 2006, with Joaquin Silva identified as the perpetrator of the murder, and Augusto Rezende investigated for indirect involvement through his illegal prospecting activities. Marta Rodriguez, then 71 years old, was finally able to hold her daughter's funeral. The ceremony, held at the Nobres Chapel, was attended by hundreds of people, including environmentalists, speleologists, and local residents who had followed the case over the years. Marina died defending what she believed in, the preservation of our natural heritage, Marta declared in her emotional speech. Her death was not in vain. Today, the Nobres caves are protected by law and are a source of pride and livelihood for the community through responsible ecotourism that she so strongly advocated for. The impact of the case was significant on the development of environmental policies in Mato Grosso. In 2007, the state government created the Gruta das Cristãs Natural Monument, a conservation unit that protects not only the cave where Marina made her last discovery, but also the entire karst complex in the region. Marina Alves Rodrigues' story became a symbol of the fight for environmental preservation in Brazil and inspired a generation of young tourism experts and environmentalists. In 2010, the Federal University of Mato Grosso, UFMT, established the Marina Rodrigues Award, given annually to the best sustainable tourism project developed by its students. The case also led to changes in the safety procedures for speleological expeditions. The Norma Marina, as it became known, establishes the mandatory presence of trained guides, constant communication between team members, and detailed route registration. During all visits to Brazilian caves, the scars left by the crime, however, never fully healed. Augusto Rezende, despite being investigated, was never formally charged due to the lack of direct evidence of his involvement. He continues to live in Paraguay, where he built a business empire in the real estate sector. Teresa Campos, the colleague who accompanied Marina on the day of the disappearance, became the tourism director of Nobres and the main person responsible for implementing the project Marina had envisioned. Today, the region receives thousands of tourists annually, attracted by the beauty of its crystal-clear waters and preserved caves. Paulo Mendes, the other colleague present on that fateful day, abandoned tourism and devoted himself to documentary photography. In 2015, he published the book Marina, A Life for Nature, with previously unseen images of the tourism expert during expeditions and texts she had written about environmental conservation. If you've watched this far, it's because you care about these cases that mark families forever. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end, so I can know you and see who really cares about the search for truth." Don't forget to like, share this video with friends and family who are interested in real-life cases, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel to follow new stories of disappearances that have marked Brazil and the world. The truth, no matter how painful it may be, is always the first step toward justice and peace.